Hi, welcome to our channel Good New. The United States and China are now locked in a full-fledged technological war. It started with the Trump administration and is still going on under US President Joe Biden. Indeed, Biden has framed the United States' confrontation with China as the most significant front in a generational battle between democracy and despotism. The tech war began as a trade dispute, but quickly evolved into a competition for primacy in essential technologies such as 5G, artificial intelligence, and semiconductors. What sparked the digital war? Why did the US target Huawei particularly with trade sanctions? What additional Chinese firms were targeted, and why were they targeted? What is China trying to mitigate the effects of US actions? Please subscribe to our channel and enable notifications before we begin today's video. What additional Chinese firms were targeted, and why were they targeted? What is China trying to mitigate the effects of US actions? Please subscribe to our channel and enable the notification bell before we begin today's video. Let's have a look at the topic we'll be discussing today. Have you ever considered what ignited the tech war? Well, in my opinion, Made in China 2025, Beijing's 10-year blueprint for transforming the country from a manufacturing giant into a world manufacturing power, is the catalyst for the tech war. Only the US was too preoccupied with the 2016 presidential election campaign when Mike 2025 was announced in 2015. Following Donald Trump's election, hawks such as trade advisor Peter Navarro and Senator Marco Rubio cited Mike 2025 as a brazen example of the Chinese government breaking international trade norms by providing state subsidies to its IT industry. Then, a series of unrelated events, such as fines and sanctions imposed on Chinese telecoms giant ZTE for concealing its role in selling US technology to Iran, a report from the US Trade Representative on China's alleged theft of US intellectual property and forced technology transfers, and concerns about Huawei Technologies Co.'s dominance in 5G technology, morphed into a broader tech war with bipartisan support. So, what is the distinction between a trade war and a technological conflict? The trade war between the United States and China began on July 6, 2018, when US President Donald Trump placed a 25% tax on $34 billion in Chinese imports, claiming the need to rebalance the US trade imbalance with China. Additional tariffs were levied in 2018 and 2019. However, the trade war was quickly eclipsed by a tech conflict fueled by US worries that China was abusing state authority and intellectual property theft to achieve its aim of becoming a worldwide leader in essential technologies such as AI, semiconductors, and 5G. What is China trying to mitigate the effects of US actions? Although China first retaliated with tariffs, the major response was the senior leadership's call to move for technological self-sufficiency. President Xi Jinping stated in the summer of 2018 that China must continue to the road of self-reliance amid escalating unilateralism and protectionism in the current world. After Huawei was barred from purchasing US chips and Shanghai-based foundry Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corp. Was barred from purchasing US technology due to potential connections to the Chinese military, which it denies, Beijing increased its focus on achieving semiconductor self-sufficiency. To accelerate the growth of the semiconductor industry, the Chinese government has showered the local chip business with favorable policies ranging from tax breaks to state subsidies for every new facility capable of producing chips at the 28nm node or lower. Analysts, however, pointed out that such a target was impossible given the large expenditures necessary to recreate each component of the current global semiconductor supply chain. Why did the US target Huawei particularly with trade sanctions? Washington's fears about Huawei extend back to the early 2000s, when it was believed that the Chinese firm had intimate links to the Beijing government. Years later, Washington was alarmed by Huawei's development as a worldwide leader in 5G technology. One of the first public measures against Huawei came in January 2018, when US senators forced AT&T to back out of a partnership to distribute Huawei handsets to US consumers. Washington prevented federal agencies from obtaining equipment and services from the Chinese corporation 7 months after the AT&T judgment. When Huawei was added to Washington's entity list in May 2019, prohibiting it from purchasing goods and services from U.S. companies without prior approval from the U.S. government, the U.S. Department of Commerce stated that Huawei and its affiliates were deemed to be involved in activities contrary to the national security or foreign policy interests of the United States. Washington also claims that Huawei violated U.S. sanctions on Iran, which resulted in the arrest of Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou in Vancouver in December 2018 on bank fraud charges. What additional Chinese firms were targeted, and why were they targeted? The U.S. Commerce Department added additional 28 Chinese public security agencies and enterprises to the trade blacklist in October 2019 in response to Beijing's alleged human rights violations against Uyghur Muslims and other mostly Muslim ethnic minorities. Facial recognition startup SenseTime, Megvii, and E2 were among those recruited, as were video surveillance experts Hikvision and Dahua Technology, AI champion iFlyTech, Xiamen Maya Pico Information Co., and Eason Science and Technology Company. These firms' technology was accused of being implicated in human rights violations. 24 Chinese government organizations and enterprises, including software behemoth Kiha 360 Technology, were sanctioned in May 2020 for supporting acquisition of commodities for military end use in China. The most recent U.S. sanctions, imposed in April, involved 7 Chinese supercomputing entities that have been blacklisted due to national security concerns. They include the National Supercomputing Center in Wuxi, which is home to the Sunway Taihu Light, which was the fastest in the world when it debuted in 2016. What role do 5G and semiconductor technologies play? The deployment of 5G mobile network services across China, which has the world's largest internet user population and smartphone market, is already expected to boost the country's information technology economy by 3.3 trillion yuan, $491 billion over the next 5 years. This development is predicted to accelerate digitization throughout conventional industries, resulting in more than 10 trillion yuan in growth over the same time span. The first commercial 5G mobile services will be available in South Korea, the United States, Australia, the United Kingdom, Switzerland, Spain, and Monaco in 2020. However, the size of China's market is projected to dwarf the combined size of those economies, thereby erasing any first-mover advantage. Semiconductors are at the heart of everything from cell phones to spaceships. Despite pouring billions of dollars into the sector over the decades, Chinese firms have struggled to catch up to global leaders such as Intel in the United States, Samsung Electronics in South Korea, and TSMC in Taiwan, all of which are investing billions of dollars of their own money in pushing the boundaries of physics and materials science. Semiconductor design and manufacturing is a famously difficult enterprise that requires decades of experience and exceptional precision. Failure to get it right may result in billions of dollars of investment being lost, as China has seen several times, most recently with the Hongxin Semiconductor Manufacturing Co-chip project in Wuhan. Overall, the U.S. has been the global tech leader for decades, thanks to its lengthy history of R&D and creation, but that position is now being challenged by China, which has placed its whole weight and tens of billions of dollars in state support behind attempts to catch up to the U.S. After Washington began to restrict China's access to key U.S.-controlled technology such as semiconductors, Beijing increased its attempts to de-Americanize its supply chain. Who do you think will come out on top in this ferocious tech war? Thanks for watching in this video. You can add your ideas or suggestions below. Please keep following our channel and like our videos.